Let's begin.
There we go. Oh, hey there, Fright Fest flies. Welcome back to Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. Speaking of flies, ever wonder what it would be like to be one of these little guys? Well, if you've checked in and you're looking for a way to check out, get settled in for a fear-inducing finale that I like to call Leaving Ambivalence Grove.
I don't even remember what day it is anymore. How many days it's been. There's nothing but perpetual darkness and silence. We don't get tired or hungry. There's no bathroom, but that's okay because we don't require one. Every once in a while, we can hear the howling and wailing of people trapped here. But outside these walls, something disturbs them in their perpetual unrest, yet it has never ventured here. I know it's him. I know it is. Nothing here breaks the monotony of dissatisfaction and uneasiness, but I'll say this. She seems to be handling the unobstructed onslaught of grief we face every moment much better than I expected she would. Maybe it's this place, or maybe it's each other. But for the unknown time we've spent here, we've both held fast to our sanity, though I don't actually know or even comprehend how long it's been. It may have been days, or years, or even just a few minutes for all I knew. There's something about it. Time here either has no meaning or makes no logical sense. Like my biological clock is either gone or useless here. Unfortunately, my solid sanity and grip on memory forces me to relive the circumstances of how we've come to be trapped here on a momentary basis. It was that fucking sign. I just had to ask. I moved to a nearby town, well, I guess it would be years ago. That's where I met Stephanie. My first acquaintance with the location was a sign on the edge of the woods, on a road just outside of town that said, "See you soon." Curious, I eventually asked her about it, and she told me this crazy legend about some old ghost town, haunted by a shadow figure, and only reachable under the light of a full moon. Well, apparently, the story wasn't as crazy as I first thought, because I'm the reason we're here. Like a fool, I talked her into driving me out there one night. Some creepy shit went down, the legend was real, the shadow figure known as the Midnight Man appeared. Shocked and mystified, we left in a hurry and made it back to our homes without issue. The next day, however, Stephanie was reported missing, and I became the main suspect regarding her disappearance. I knew what I had seen, what we had both seen, and I knew what had taken her, where it had taken her. So, I researched, I investigated and waited, and one night, I got my chance. I confronted that shadowy fucker under the light of a blue moon and followed him here. A man by the name and title of Detective Williamson watched me leave with a man in black, assured that not only would I be back, but that I was involved in some sort of adolescent homicide pact. Talk about barking up the wrong fucking tree. Had he followed me, he'd have seen that he was wrong. He would have found her just like me. But lucky for him, he awaited for my return from the comfort of his vehicle. Steph and I, however, can never leave. This building has no doors or windows, no portals for escape. But I got my wish. I had promised myself that I would find her, and every moment that passes by, I try to take solace in the fact that I had accomplished my goal.
There's no way out of here. I know I've said that. It's just... there's no hope.
Steph said, speaking up for the first time in a while. It's all my fault. I'm so sorry, I said in remorse.
It's okay. It's not your fault. Besides, you came for me.
She said in reassurance. I know, I began to speak. But the increasing psionic aura surrounding everything broke my attention. The dim glow grew brighter and brighter until I nearly had to shut my eyes. There, in the overpowering radiance of blue light, a door on the other side of the room where I had entered. It was a door. I don't even think I'd had time to get my hopes up, never mind take a step, because the light and the door were both gone in an instant, leaving both Steph and I bewildered and rubbing our eyes.
What was that?
Stephanie asked me, but I had no rational response to give her. Still confused myself. I have no idea. How can we ever hope to escape a place that we can't understand? I asked in desperation. I'm sure Steph thought I was asking her, but I was honestly bargaining with myself, trying to grapple with this place that defied reason and natural law, bound within a set of rules far beyond our understanding.
Okay, now what the fuck was that?
Steph asked again. We had explored every inch of this place, looking for an escape, and found nothing. No way out. Nothing living. Nothing that used to be living. Just a vacant church, standing testament of sermons gone by, or a mockery of those that would never once again be. So, when that sound resonated throughout the interior of this isolated hell as we both listened intently, I knew something had changed. Something was different. Something I couldn't place a finger on, other than the introduction of the new audible stimulus. As Steph and I crept forward, towards the source of the noise ever so slowly, it dawned on me. Light. Natural light was seeping in through the cracks and old seams of the church, so very subtle, but growing stronger and stronger with each step we took, each moment that passed. Steph, I think, I started to say out loud, but was silenced when Steph tugged on my sleeve. Looking in her direction, I saw her arm extended outward, ending in a pointed finger. I followed the trajectory with my eyes and saw something on the floor. Something I'm sure that wasn't there before.
Oh my god. Is that a person?
Stephanie asked me. To tell you the truth, it took her suggestion for me to see it as well. My perception imposed by its twisted and distorted shape. It just kind of looked like a slithering mass to me. Pale snakes and mounds of flesh just twisting in on one another, writhing about like an orgy of fleshy gray tentacles and lumps. But that final noise, combined with Stephanie's inquiry, the moving orifice that gaped in sync with that grunt, the anxiety and terror inside me, turned solid and immovable, worsening to a point I didn't think possible anymore. I had to squint to truly see it in the piss-poor lighting, but she was right. That fleshy bulb at its one end, 2 deep sockets, the remnants of hair, and that moving pit in the lower center. It was the thing's head, and this thing had either once been a human being or was a horrific, mocking representation of one's torment. "What the fuck? What the hell is that thing?" I asked, but before she even had a chance to reply.
Help us.
I wanted to run, but there was no place to run to. A part of me wanted to inquire, ask questions, and maybe offer assistance, but I couldn't formulate the words. I didn't know how to react. But Stephanie did.
Look there. I think it's pointing.
She noted to me. I couldn't react. I was beyond the capacity for rational thought, my brain awash and my body frozen. I didn't budge, or possibly even breathe, until Steph proceeded towards the thing, but slightly off to the side, to the right of it. My expression turned to that of confusion as I noticed her start to claw and pull at the boards on the floor beneath where she was now standing. "Steph, what the hell are you doing?" I said, between a whisper and a yell, so as to get her attention, while attempting to avoid being noticed by the abomination squirming on the floor. Its body made cracking and squishing noises as it moved, underscoring its unnatural disposition. I wanted to move to her, and even now I don't understand where she got the courage to do so herself, although I suppose the label of forever doomed may assist in casting off apprehension regarding one's fate.
Hey, check this out.
Stephanie called out to me, and finally I had found the courage to approach the blob on the floor and reach Stephanie's side. Still, I stood further away than she. I opened my mouth to ask what she wanted me to investigate, but when she held up the pages bound in leather and dark brown with dust, I already knew. It was a journal, and although I had yet to discover even one of its pages for myself, somehow I just knew that this was going to be our ticket out of here.
What's it say?
Steph asked as she leaned in over my shoulder. We had moved to the last row of pews in the back, as far away from that thing and the podium it lay next to as we could. Well, for one, it says that this thing was written over a century ago, I told her, noting the date of the first entry.
Well, go on. Read it.
I licked my lips and started narrating the first page for her. July 27th, 1895. Our little quarry town has suffered many hardships lately, mostly due to a lack of mineable materials and ore. Trade has decreased to a crawl, prompting workers to change their location of excavation. No one wanted to go in that cave, fearing the yarns folk spin around here regarding spooks and nameless terrors in there, but starvation yields a necessity that most able-bodied men are obliged to accommodate. Exploration has proven most valuable. There are desirable materials abound down there, and today specifically, one of the men found something strange. A worker happened to come across a small golden trinket inside of one of the chambers, deep inside the cavern. Once provided to the right men in charge, it didn't take long for them to bring it to my attention. I inspected the thing to find it to be a small amulet of sorts, a small hole for running through a piece of twine. I will keep this relic for now. If there's more like this down there, our town's finance issues will be resolved. Stephanie listened intently without a word, and when I had finished, she said nothing, anxiously awaiting more. I flipped a few more pages into the book before stopping and read out loud once again. July 29th, 1895. I fear we may have disturbed something in the dark, something meant to be left alone to rot in isolation. There's been whispers in the caves about a dark shadow in the tunnels, or the presence of something malevolent, staring at them with malice, only to find that there's nothing there. Cold drafts in the deep, where no air current should reside. A few days ago, people had come to me after service, warning me of a demon roaming the streets of town at night. At first, I believed them to be drunk or misinformed by their perceptions, but it's become difficult, if not impossible, to deny them any longer. The descriptions of each and every account described the beast as a shadowy mass, the appearance of a hat upon his head, always looking up at their windows at night. Either this is an elaborate prank upon the priest of this fine town, for which they will all pay penance for deceit, or there really is something more. And if it is a prank, this priest is guilty of participation, because I too peered from my window last night to see this form staring back at me. Either I'm insane due to mass hysteria, or we are all in danger.
Please tell me there's more. What happened here? Skip to the last entry.
Steph inquired, and then insisted. I conceded by proceeding to the last recording within the journal's bindings. Once reaching it, I once again read the subsequent account. August 3rd, 1895. He came for us. I don't know what happened, but I'll do my best to describe it while I still can. I was asleep in my bed, settled down until sunrise when I was awakened by a light, a bright blue light that grew to such intensity for that moment I thought myself to be blinded as a result. And that's when the screaming started. It sounded like a cacophony of animal cries at first, but their chorus crescendoed. I realized it to be screams, the screams of men, women, and children. It's my job to protect them. I should have protected my flock. I ran out the front gate of my home, into the streets beyond, and that's when I saw them. People. All the people in town. Mrs. Hamesley, Joe Garrison, Clive MacDonald, all of them screaming in agony in the streets, under the glow of a moon too big and too blue to be of this world. I tried to help them. I held Mrs. Hamesley in my arms, trying to comfort her, but her body just twisted and snapped into positions that should have killed her. Yet she lived, unable to properly move, unable to die. My God. So that's when I came here. I came here to pray to our Lord for salvation. But the beast, he stopped me before I could enter our church, this house of God. He touched me, and without a mouth from which to speak, he whispered with a growl, "Amulet." It's that accursed object. Had we not been so greedy, had we not been so quick to covet it, this beast of the blackest midnight may have been left alone to his unrest. But he's out now, and I know that the only way for escape is to return this accursed trinket to whence it came. His touch has affected me. I feel his malice and fear the torment that I now know. He cannot touch me here. This is hallowed ground, but I carry his curse with me. The pain is growing, and I already know my unavoidable fate. Let the last act I perform in the name of purity be to bind this amulet of heretics and evil to the leather of this journal. I will leave it here. If I am unable to return it to its origin, then that abomination will never retrieve it either. If someone finds this in some way unimaginable to me now, please, keep it from him. It is the key to reality, his key to the domain of earth, man, and God. May he rot in unrest with the rest of us.
So that's it? Check the cover.
Steph implored me, but I was already ahead of her. The front had nothing special upon its smooth, leathery surface, but when I flipped it over, I felt a spark of something within me that I'd almost forgotten entirely. A sensation that I longed for without even realizing it. Hope. A golden circle engraved with odd symbols and runes was impressed and set within the leather on the back. I stood up and began walking towards the center aisle and towards the external wall without saying a word, not wanting to get her hopes up.
What are you doing?
Steph asked me as I walked away, but I said nothing. I approached the dark and dusty planks of the old church wall, outstretched my hand with a book in its clutches, and touched it to the wall. No smoke, no noise, no dissolve or transition at all. There was just a door, like it had always been, unwavering in resolve.
Oh my God, a door!
Steph yelled. I turned and smiled at her and waited for her to get to me before taking her hand and looking into her eyes. With my heart in my throat and a newfound hope in my heart, I gave the door a gentle push, and it opened. Now, I had no clue as to where I was going, honestly, but I'd led the two of us straight to the cave from the entry. It was the book, or maybe more likely the medallion. It was like it pulled me to it, nudging me in the right direction. There was a whisper in the air. No movement, but a howl, as if there was. We didn't see him, didn't hear his presence, but I knew he was there, watching us, following us, and I hurried our pace. The mouth of the cavern we had entered was small, crumbled over and still with a lack of time. But stooping over and getting inside, the passages opened up to near cathedral sizes of height. I reached in my pocket for my cell, expecting it to be dead due to having not been charged in an age. There was no signal, no bars, but the battery was still at half-life. The same as when I had first entered this place so long ago. Apparently, there's advantages to the flow of time being halted. I turned on the flashlight app once again and crept further inside with Steph right behind me. Hearts pounding, breath heavy. The sounds of our heaving echoed off the chambers around us, punctuating the depth of the place. There were many, many turns and places of divergence, but the book in my hand drew me closer, its tug stronger and stronger with each step. It seemed like a lifetime before we reached what I knew had to be it. A chamber, deep within the maze of tunnels, an accent of red cascaded across the surface of its interior. The light source unknown, but this is where it had led me. This has got to be it, Steph. I looked at her and told her.
I don't want to waste any time. Can we please just go?
I took a deep breath and began walking forward into the room. I felt heat on the surface of the book, and as it grew, it threatened to burn my hand. When I investigated, I found the source to be that golden amulet, now beginning to glow red to match the shade of this room. Hotter and hotter it got as I drew towards the center, but something stopped us where we stood. The terror and loss of hope from before returned with a ferocity, shaking me to my soul.
You will not leave here.
Steph and I both froze. I slowly turned my head, not wanting to see what made that sound from only a few feet behind me. In the archway we had just passed through stood a shape that I had not seen in a timeless era, since the night that I had come to this wretched plane of existence. Tall, blacker than the shadows that surrounded him, the bulb on his shoulders topped off with a hat, the shadow of its brim encircling its diameter. I had nothing to say. No words came to the forefront of my lips, but Steph, brave as always, had no reservations regarding her stance.
You son of a bitch! I don't know what the hell you are, but you won't stop us. We're leaving this place. You've lost,
Steph said, trying to hide her overwhelming fear. It seemed to work, as I noticed none.
Child, escape is a relative term. There is no escape. You will not leave, because I will follow. What is mine is always and forever mine, and I will rebalance the scales concerning what is lost or taken from my grasp.
I didn't want to hear any more. I took a step back with Steph, a few inches further into the center, and the room reacted. The red of the room, the heat of the amulet, it all receded to be replaced with a blue and a cold. A flash of light so brilliant that Steph and I were forced to cover our eyes. The glow through our eyelids waned, and the darkness of our shut eyes set in. Hesitantly, I opened them. Blackness, but not an ethereal or foreboding blackness. It was the darkness of the forest. The intensity of the full moon above the canopy seeped through the net it created and rained down within the sparse rays of pale light. There were no sounds to be heard, but it was the woods of reality, only a few hundred yards from that sign, in the sight of the road. We were home.
We did it! You did it! You got us back!
Steph exclaimed, the existence of tears and relief underlying the tone of her voice. I turned to see a face I had begun to lose hope of seeing again, a happy smile of joy accenting Stephanie's demeanor. The crunching noise of leaves and snapping twigs from behind us demanded our attention. I dreaded the realization of what was right behind us. Freeze! I never thought I'd be so happy to hear that voice speak that word directed at me. I'd recognized it from the countless interrogations I'd endured at the local precinct. It was Detective Williamson. I hadn't realized it yet, but we had returned on the same night I had left, as if I were only gone a couple of hours. He must have gotten really tired of waiting for me to return, as he had been waiting in the forest inconspicuously, anticipating answers or even a confrontation. I ignored his command and turned around anyway, risking the outcome of being gunned down. Man, I'd never thought I'd say this, but I'm so happy to see you, I said. Get down on the ground, now! He yelled at me. Miss, are you all right? He said to Stephanie, but before she could respond, he put his hand on my shoulder in an attempt to force me to the ground.
You don't understand. You're making a mistake. I'm fine.
My struggle against the detective's physical influence caused him to refocus on me. I said get the fuck on the ground! Steph approached him, trying to defend me, and pulled on his arm in an attempt to get him to release me. When he shoved her, I saw red. The devastation and trauma that I had endured, everything that I had gone through to get her back. I hit him. Probably not the smartest idea, I agree, but it was like a reflex. As the detective reeled back to retaliate, Steph approached him once more. Maybe he was startled. Maybe he was just being a dick, but he pushed her so hard, Steph practically flew to the ground. I heard the thud when she collided with it, but didn't find out until later that she had hit her head on a stone. You fucking asshole! I yelled at him. I think he had more to say because he opened his mouth as if to speak. but he never got the chance. When he shifted his position to the side, I saw something that tore my ambitions down to nothing from the inside out. "No," I whispered, begging with whatever may hear me to spare me from this fate, helping me to end it. Terror and relief. That's the only way I can describe it. Both emotions felt equally when the Midnight Man of Ambivalence Grove grabbed Detective Williamson instead of me. Detective Williamson's motion for words turned to that of a scream as he yelled out in what I can only describe as unimaginable pain. His grip released from the shock and dropping the pistol to the ground. I watched that beast, the Midnight Man of Ambivalence, shrink ever closer into nothingness. A band of shadows like tentacles or arms gripping Williamson by the torso, as the Midnight Man slowly grew smaller, fading from our reality. So too did Detective Williamson. I watched his body rigidly move and shift into unnatural contortions, coupled with the crack of bones and the squish of stretching and tearing flesh. The last of Detective Williamson to remain was his echoing call of agony. But the last I heard of the Midnight Man crossed the void after all was gone from perception.
A debt repaid.
It's been years since everything's happened, and Stephanie has all but forgotten about the event, something I'm grateful for. I had gotten us help soon shortly after we escaped the woods, after I disposed of the pistol Williamson had dropped. I knew that no one would find it in the nearby river up the road. Steph being so small, it wasn't too hard to carry her to the edge of the road. I didn't want to leave her side, so I walked a few yards, with her still within my sight, and chucked it the rest of the way into the weeds. The subsequent splash signaled I had hit my mark. Soon after, a motorist would see us there on the side of the road, close to that sign. He didn't even hesitate when I asked him to take us to the hospital. When Steph awoke, the memory of it all began to pass, details escaping her moment by moment as if disassociating with a dream too far from the conscious mind to retain. As for me, well, Steph's memories seemed to stick upon our return. The furthest back she could remember was being attacked by the detective. I told them that I had just found her out there, that Detective Williamson had been holding her captive. Dishonest, but they weren't going to believe me, and it provided me with an out. Wanted for questioning, but nowhere to be found. Their focus was thankfully shifted from me. I still have that old journal. I hid it in my parents' basement once I was able to get home. They'll never find it, and neither will he. And although I, or Steph, haven't experienced anything out of the ordinary since, living perfectly happy lives together for quite some time, I still get anxious when the night comes. I fear he will return for me, or worse, her. Because to have escaped, not only one has been taken, and tonight I'll shut my curtains and refuse to look outside, no matter what happens. You see, what occurs tonight is an event that only happens once in a great while, and the forest surrounding Ambivalence will be bathed in the light of a blue moon.
Well, that just goes to show these little bastards that, one way or another, their days are numbered. After all, death is the omnipotent hunter. But if you're feeling as though sticking around is the preferable choice, make sure to drop in again next weekend And until then, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can catch you all again next Saturday.